So should I just
No,
start?
we have, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Good evening and welcome as we continue our online Sial Winter Festival at Majha House. This is our fifth session, and I'm delighted to welcome Easterine Kire and Veio Pou. Easterine Kire is a longtime friend from the beautiful state of Nagaland, one of my most favorite places to visit in India, as much for its rare beauty as for the warmth and boisterousness of its people. I love Easterine's writing, her simple, elegant style, and her completely unusual stories that interweave Naga folklore and beliefs with her own personal experiences and those of her community. Their unique history, their everyday lives, all of it comes through in Easterine's novels. She is the winner of a number of prestigious awards, and her novels have been widely translated. And they've also become part of curriculums in many universities. She's joining us from northern Norway today, and her talk is on memory and how a writer dredges memory to create literature. Talking to her and introducing her is Veio, who teaches English at Shahid Bhagat Singh College in Delhi. And he's just published his first novel, Waiting for the Dust to Settle, that came out in November. So I just wanted to make another couple of remarks, which is that fiction for me has always been a space that one can explore new cultures and different spaces. Literature doesn't carry with it the baggage of, political opinion. So one actually enters another space in a completely new way with a new and perspective, full of new possibilities. And at Majha House, our key focus has always been on the power of stories, of literature, of art, and ideas, and how these can bring together diverse communities and ideas, and then they generate new linkages and new solidarities. So, with that, I'd like to hand over to you now, Vio, to take forward this today evening's program. Easterine will talk to us, and I hope you will talk to us and also lead her on with more questions. Thank you all for being here today.
Right. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you very much, Preeti and Majha House, for this invitation. Majha House has been doing some incredible works, especially during the pandemic, and we really appreciate having to some other programs and really enriched because they pull in together lots of knowledgeable people, celebrities to come and listen to them. And I am much more excited also because this is the winter festival. You know, we are chilling in Delhi and really are enjoying the winter. So as we celebrate this Sial, as Preeti has already mentioned, I hope we all will be able to enjoy this festival, which goes on tomorrow and a few more days to go. So Preeti has introduced Easterine beautifully. I won't add any more to that. And of course, Easterine in a way has no need for introduction actually, because she's such a well-known personality to many people, not just in India, but across many parts of the world. And the poster that has been sent to you also tells a lot about her achievements. Just a couple of things to add to it. She's one of the most well-known writers from the northeastern part of India and has been translated. Her works have been translated to various languages in India as well as outside in foreign languages. She's a poet, a writer, and a translator. And interesting fact, which some of you may not know, is that she also writes in Norwegian, and not just posting on Facebooks, but she writes books in Norwegian. That's an incredible, talent she's got. So we're so privileged to have her. And without spending much time, I'm not going to give the time to Easterine. And after our talk, we'll have a little bit of conversation to engage and also if there are a couple of questions, if we have time to take on. So now over to Easterine for this talk. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, India, because it's 6 there, though it's just 1:30 here. I want to start with a poem, which I'm going to dedicate to Preeti because she asked me to read a poem. Veio, thank you for the introduction. And it feels very comfortable here. I feel at home because I see loved and familiar faces like you two, Preeti and Veio, and then the other friends. I recognize some of them, so I just feel very safe in your presence. Here's the poem. It's called The Right to Stories. In the spaces that I call home, where tigers roam the hill heart, and deep, deep in those woods lives the son of the man who became a bear. In the skies that cover the spaces that I call home, sky husbands appear in the night skies, looking for earth wives. Tree, rock, bird, flower, every river has a name, every mountain holds a story, every story a right to be told. I don't know if we'll come back to that poem, but maybe you'll find things in the talk that are connected to the poem. I'm going to talk about harvesting memory, and something I want to start with is a question that I received in an interview where the interviewer asked this interesting question. She asked, is it history, is it experience, or is it memory that helps you to write books? So my answer was all three, because all three come together to constitute a book, and I cannot isolate one from the other. Yes, to start with this topic of harvesting memory, I want to say that I've been harvesting memory for a very long time now, more than 25 years. And I wish I had begun even earlier. I started doing this while I was doing my PhD at about 37 years. And I started with harvesting community memory, collecting oral folk tales, sitting with oral narrators and storytellers for hours on end, and collecting their oral narratives. And all these people were in their 80s. So they're all gone now. So I'll talk about how time-bound the resource of memory is later. And for my own convenience, I always divide memory into community memory and personal memory or family memory. I want to explain a little what community memory is. And community memory for me is like a vault, because it holds so many treasures. Treasures like village history and the lore of the folk. That's the wisdom, the native wisdom of the folk. Like proverbs, sayings, teachings, customary laws, rituals of births, deaths, marriages, rituals of festivals and taboo days, and also the myths and the tales. So this is what community memory constitutes for me. And so much more can come into it. Then I want to tell you about Chapter College, because that's a very good example of how community memory is being used contemporaneously. It's amusing as well, and yet it serves such a great purpose that in the Department of Sociology, students are asked to write assignments on cultural topics. A student, for example, was asked to write about the marriage rituals of his tribe. And our dear student didn't know anything about that. So what he had to do was to phone his parents in the village, and the parents didn't know either. And then they had to go to the elders and find out. They had to use the community just to gather data for a single student's college assignment. But isn't that wonderful? They're making active use of community memory in this way. So that was a thing that I wanted to mention. And this is still going on. I'm so proud of Jaffa College. Now, community memory, what I got out of it personally was that it gave me raw material to write on historical fiction, yes, but it was Naga-centric history, and books that cover, for example, the Battle of Konoma, which took place in 1880, the Second World War in Kohima, which we always called the Japan War, the Japanese invasion, but it's always Japan. Then the Indo-Naga War, starting from the 50s. So I drew a lot from community memory to write these books. And I found out that there's so much wisdom in community memory. It can be used to answer different kinds of questions. I'll just dwell on one question in particular, which I find so intriguing. It is how to tell time. You must have wondered, how does the farmer who's never been to school, the unlettered villager, how does he tell time? And how does the farmer know when to sow his crops? The answer is found in community memory. He uses nature to decipher sowing seasons. For example, he listens to the calls of different wild birds, or different birds. All birds are wild, sorry, or should be. And then he also watches for the blossoming of wildflowers and ground orchids. And he uses these signs as to guide him to sow his vegetables and paddy. Then the other thing is deciding the days, not dates, the days for holding festivals. And this happens this is done by the priest, and I love to call them moon watchers, because in effect that is what they do. They watch the moon, that is their lunar calendar, and they have this process of counting days from when the new moon is sighted. Don't ask me questions about that later, because I just have this surface information. But counting that, the priest is able to get a day for the festival, and then he announces it. So the lunar calendar, then using the natural world around them, all these are ways of telling time for the Naga villager. Yes, something that was so interesting, not just this aspect of fixing a time for the festival, but using the moon to, in the area of agriculture that I experienced personally, was an incident that happened last year. My brother-in-law was told to sow his beans. He wanted to plant beans. So he's told to sow the seeds after midnight on a moonless night. And what would that do? It would prevent him from getting or it would help him to get a pest free harvest. So he did it. And they waited up and waited up. And after midnight, they sowed their seeds. I forgot to ask him if he got the desired result, but when I hear from him, I'll let you know, pretty. Yeah, and then the other way of telling time using community memory is the way the village historians do it. They use battles to tell time. and to tell historical time. And this is something that we do, but many other indigenous communities employ. For example, to determine the age of a person, um, parents would say, oh, he was born before the war, the year before the war, or he was born the year after the war. So this helps people to decide how old they are. And when they say the war, there have been so many wars in Nagaland. So when it's a person in his late 70s or 80s, then we know they mean the Second World War, the war in 1944. But if it is a person born in the 50s and they say born during the war, then we know it's a reference to the Indo-Naga War. And Veio, I have a title to give you for your next book, because this is uh, the way we refer to the period in the 50s. In Angami, it's called Taketutiki. But when you translate it to English, it is Days on the Run. Days on the Run. So that's your next book title. I'm kidding, I can give it to you again. But I think it's so beautiful because so much is encompassed into that. It's anxiety, it's separation, it's tragedy, and you're leaving your home, you're on the run. And that period is called Days on the Run. And people still use it to tell time. Okay. Yes, so it's very interesting that the most well-preserved narratives of community memory are those memories to do with battles. Yes, but this is not the only device used to tell time in community memory. And I want to tell you the story of a friend of mine. He's a Zimbabwean writer. He was a novelist and poet, Chenjerai Hove. And Chenjerai told me that they have a period called the Year of the Railroad. The Year of the Railroad. And in Zimbabwe, that was the year 1956. And Chenjerai did not have a birth certificate. When he needed one, he asked his mother when he was born. And she said, oh, you were born the year of the railroad. So he chose a day that he liked and a month that he liked, and then he made a birth certificate. So it worked. I mean, you can still use community memory for purposes like that. Then, yes, I see some researchers here. So I just want to say that when you're when you're drawing from the well of community memory, remember to also take down clan memory, because we, amongst the Nagas, we have so many different clans. There's always 3 clans in a village or 4 clans. And so each of these clan memories, they are important, and then they're part of community memory, but in a way they're also separate from community memory, and all of them are valid. I maintain that. I want to also mention the fact that yes, because community memory is also so much more than just village history, and it has all those things that I mentioned, like the lore, village lore and wisdom, the stories and sayings and teachings, and rituals. And then it includes things like the practice of prophecy, the harnessing of dreams. So I could use it, draw upon it to write my book, Son of the Thundercloud, and also to write Forest Song. So it serves such a wonderful purpose. Then another thing about community memory is the whole aspect of spirit sightings. Both community memory and family memory, they have a rich store of spirit sightings. It's something that's intrinsic to the Naga soul. I grew up surrounded by people who had seen spirits, people who had had spirit encounters, and also spiritual experiences, and both grandparents and parents, or at least grandmothers and mothers, who set great store by their dreams. So we have a phenomenon called listening to your dreams, and when when you grow up like that, the spirit world is real to you. And I I believe the large percentage of Nagas are believers. So from this granary of community memory, um, there comes the spiritual landscapes or the spirit landscapes, then the metaphors and images that belong to it. And my tribesmen, they can recognize it when I talk about it or when I write about it. And it's so wonderful to have that bondedness. So I've used that a lot, and then made the discovery that hunters have their own separate individual contributions to make to community memory. Why? Because they go out the furthest. They're the ones who go and discover or explore what we call the virgin forests, and then they bring back stories from there. And also there are always rituals of hunting. Maybe I could mention one. I see that there's enough time. One is that when you're hunting in a forest where people have not hunted before, you should never call out your fellow hunters by name. You should whistle their name, but never call out their name. And because Tenyidie is a tonal language, it's possible to whistle a person's name and also to whistle a whole sentence. So this is the form of communication that they use. Hunter stories are so wonderful. They're just so exciting. My publisher says they are in the realm of fantasy, but for us, it's a reality that we embrace. It's part of our reality, sort of. So I've used the accounts of my hunter friends to make the framework of my book, When the River Sleeps. I want to also talk about personal memory or family memory. I come from a very big family of 7 children, and I'm the middle child. Then we have a great extended family of many, many cousins. So I have cousins who are 10 years or 13, 14 years older. And it's wonderful because they're such a resource. They've seen Kohima, old Kohima after the war. They have post-war memories. And I always pester them and I draw so much from them. And I used so much of family memory to write books like Marie or A Respectable Woman and Walking the Roadless Road. I must tell you that when I was about 15 and spending my summer holidays with my Aunt Marie in Upper Assam, she deposited her memories in me, starting from that age onward. I guess she felt I was old enough then. So she told me her great love story. And you all know, most of you know about the Marie story. And it was the perfect World War II romance. There was this young, innocent girl who'd fallen in love with a soldier, and it was a soldier who'd come to defend her homeland. That sort of story. And then to complete it, okay, in between they got engaged, they got married in the Naga way, and they were waiting for the war to be over so they could get married in church as well. And then one day before reinforcements came on the 19th April, and on the 18th he was killed by a sniper. So I hope it doesn't sound cynical to say this, but it is the perfect wartime romance, because that's how wartime romances end. Yeah, so that was family memory, and I also used my mother's and Mari's memories to recreate old Kohima, or pre-war Kohima and wartime Kohima. I used their visual memories. So I am so indebted to my mother for her memories, because without that I couldn't have written A Respectable Woman. And my mom was 12 years old, so they had been evacuated during the war, and then they came back to Kohima after the war, and their house was missing. Not just that, the whole village was flattened. So with the rest of the population, they had to start building their lives from scratch, and that's what went into Respectable Woman. I also want to mention objects of memory that we used to have, but which are going away. One is the munitions boxes, the British munitions boxes. In the 60s, my mother made birthday cakes and cakes at Christmas out of in an old munitions box. And many of the mothers in Kohima used to do this. It was a British munitions box that they never bothered to clear. So I guess the women found them lying around and then found a use for them. So for us, we grew up with that, and that was our cake box. And then in the 70s, electric ovens were sold in the army canteen. Before Vishal, the army canteen was where everyone went to get to get household items. So then, much later on, I think it was in the 90s, I asked my mother where the munitions box was, and she didn't remember. She thought it must have been taken away by the in Nagaland we call him the Lohatina plastic guy. What is that in English? He's just a guy who comes around, and the rag guy, and he buys bottles and he buys. Arvinder, do you have a name for that? The Lohatina plastic guy. So it went to him. So a wonderful piece of memory went to this guy, and it must have been destroyed somewhere now. Then another object of memory was the Japanese helmets. Villagers found so many Japanese helmets, and do you know what they did with them? You might still find them when you go to villages in south of Kohima. They use them as flower pots, and beautiful flowers were grown in these helmets. It's such a hippie thing, where you see posters or T-shirts with a gun and flowers coming out of the mouth of the gun. But here was a real example of what people did with objects of war. Then I want to also mention my big brother David, who collected a tin trunk full of bullets from my grandfather's garden alone. And I'll quote him. He says, there were about 303 bullets. Now this is in the 60s, or maybe he started collecting in the late 50s. 303 bullets. We removed the gunpowder and use it for smoking out rats. I don't know how he did that. And then he also says, I don't remember finding grenades, but we found empty casings. So in the 60s, the Second World War was still very much with us. That makes me want to tell you about war debris. Veio, do I still have time to war debris? Okay, yeah. Okay, I won't take too long. Have you ever wondered what was done about war debris? I can answer that. I can say that not very much was done, because in 1956, my father's cousin was teaching in a border village, a border between Naga Hills and Burma. And then they found an unexploded mortar shell. And he and another man, another teacher, I think, but or something, wanted to take out the gunpowder. For Nagas, gunpowder is like gold. So they went on a Saturday when the school was closed. They went down with baskets and maybe an axe or a hammer, and they went to open the shell and take out the gunpowder. And some time later, the villagers heard a huge explosion. So people came running to find out what it was, and they never found the men. They found that the mortar shell had exploded. So that was one instance of war debris. Then in 1977, the pastor of the Kohima church, the Kohima village church, was attending early morning prayers around 4:35, and he was praying. He had his eyes closed, but he heard the sound of children in the church, children running up and down. So he was so surprised. He opened his eyes, and there was no one there. But later that day, a group of 7 boys. It was 8 boys, but one boy survived. 7 boys who were staying in the village while their parents went to the fields found again an unexploded shell, and they tried to open it, and of course all 7 died. So we have this, we have stories of war debris in our hometown, in our home village, I should say, and all this has gone into community memory and stayed there. Yeah, I think I've spoken enough. I want to thank you, Priti, and thank Majha House for this lovely opportunity to think about community memory, to think about memory, because the thought that I want to leave behind is that it's a big reminder of how fragile memory is as a resource. So I don't know if this is possible, but maybe Majha House could send out a message to funding agencies and to the government or whoever funds projects, that because memory is such a fragile resource, they shouldn't waste time granting funds for projects, projects on community memory to be begun, because as we wait for months and months for funds to come, the people die. People die, and then we lose all those memories. Just last week on Facebook, there was a story about a woman who was the last member of a 4-member team, and those 4 women back in the 50s, they had woven the first Naga national flag, and this woman had died last week. And a young filmmaker who I talked to, she told me that she was so sad because she had left it too late to go and interview this woman and take down her memories. So keeping that in mind, I just want to remind all of us how time bound this treasure is, and how we have to I'll have to look into that and use Majha House to do that. Yes, I'm done, Veio. Just bombard me with questions.
Well, thank you so much. That's quite enlightening, and we've got so much to digest and so much of new thoughts, words to catch up on, and also the way you actually put things to is so simple, and yet we understand that this is not going to be easy to harvest memory as you put it. But this is, as you rightly put it, a very important aspect, which societies like the Nagas, which are primarily oral societies, are fast losing this potential of gathering their own history. So I think um, it's an important aspect, and I'm sure many people who have joined in today are are so privileged to be able to listen to Easterine as she moved on. So we will be able to take a couple of questions, but before that, um, I also want to just ask a couple of questions to Easterine. As you are also aware that Easterine is also a children's book writer. She has written a lot of books for children, and many of her children's books are very culture specific. So in that aspect, I wanted to ask her, um, what made her take on this project, or rather this interest of writing for children? How important is it that we should, let children read culture-specific stories? So could you please share
Yeah,
some thoughts on that?
yeah, sure, sure. Um, at the same time, um, while saying that, while saying that it helps children to learn about their culture, that was one point in my agenda, and that the Hornbill, for example, the Hornbill Festival brought so many cultural practices into visibility. So you would see the log drum, and maybe children were curious about how it was to be used, or maybe they were not, but that provided an avenue to talk about it, to educate children in a very simple way by writing a children's book. So I wrote about the log drummer. Then what was the other one? Oh, folk dances. It's such a stereotypical image of Nagas, but I wanted to show that it's not just dancing. There's so much meaning and beauty behind that, but to show that in a very simple way. So I wrote the Dancing Village, and we had such fun in Delhi launching that and dancing with the whole audience. But and we've done that since then, dancing in different schools, and then when the dancers are from the Zaliang tribe, they're able to explain the the meaning of the gestures and all the other deeper cultural meanings behind the dance. So it's sort of cultural education in a fun way. And then I want to say that writing children's books, it's not just, it's not right if you just write it with this agenda in mind. Why I write children's books is because I want to let the child in me come out and play. And when you do that, there's a wonderful response from the reader, both from the child reader and the adult reader. So the child inside, we shouldn't smother the child inside. We should allow the child inside to come out and engage with the child in others. I think that'll make for a much healthier world. Okay, I'm done.
No, I think that's very important, and I think even though of course for most parts of Easterine's writing, we have most people have been reading her poems and her novels. I think her children's literature, children's books are also quite interesting, and I'm sure this is going to be an area which many young people should also catch up on. You have written a lot about memories of Kohima. The growth of the town itself is like, we can see so many things, not just in Mari, but also in, let's say, Respectable Woman, and other novels. You have glimpses of Kohima of the past. And it is beautiful that you brought so much of things which actually have vanished. How do you how do you kind of recreate uh, um, how do you recreate a Kohima that is actually lost in time, and what takes you to actually recreate them besides this community and family memories? What are some of those things that helps you connect with this,
Yeah.
and when you write about this, could you share your thoughts on that?
Right. Right. Veio, I could ask you the same question myself, because your book, Waiting for the Dust to Settle, does exactly that. It's memories of your boyhood, I believe, and memories of your town as you remember it from your childhood and early adulthood. So that's what I also do, remember, and also do verification, because historical events like the bombing of the one cinema hall that we had, I had to check with friends who and I had to be very sure about the date. I couldn't get the date wrong, but the other things I just harvested from my personal memories, family memories, and uh, not everything is available in books for us. We're still such an oral society. So it was going back, going down memory lane, as people would say, and trying to retrieve and recreating with that. But also, it helped very much with the older cousins, as I was saying, us being able to ask older cousins, and that way I like technology for one or two reasons. Though it's very intrusive, it connects you immediately to sources like a cousin who remembers what kind of shops there were in when the town of Kohima was starting out, or all those things that are considered historical events, like the Billy Graham Crusade, and we have those markers, history markers. So I use all those resources.
Yeah, thank you. Now, there's one question from Deboshri Dattari, and she was asking about how do you think COVID-19 would impact cultural memory? Of course, this is going to be a very new thing. If you think it is not quite relevant to what you are talking, then I give you freedom to evade that. But is there anything that can affect cultural memory in a situation like this when we go through, let's say, a pandemic?
What about death? If deaths of the elders in a situation where the cultural memories are not collected, that immediately that comes in mind, that with deaths, as I narrated about the filmmaker who lost out on the opportunity of interviewing the woman, the last member of the team. In that way, if we don't do anything about the resources we have when they're alive, when they die, it's completely gone. Then that cultural memory is lost. I don't know if that accurately answers your question. I didn't quite understand the question myself, but I would think of that.
Um, Yeah, okay. I think that's quite okay. There are a couple of questions, but I'm just going to paraphrase this because they
Okay,
are
yes,
similar.
thank you. Yeah.
One has asked about, yeah. So there are a couple of questions which are similar. So I'm going to just club them together and paraphrase for them.
Yeah.
One is when you talk about memories of families and community, these are smaller histories, but how legitimate are those for, let's say, people group? How legitimate can that be considered for the history of the people, let's say? And since these memories are also preserved by elders of each community, maybe they could also be seen as people with power. Uh, and the other thing which actually is being asked here is how do the parents, as far as the Indo-Naga conflict is concerned, how do the parents and the elders' memory of the conflict shape the contemporary generation's understanding of the conflict?
Let's take the first question first. I've seen a lot of integrity
Sure.
in oral narrators. They they operate as a group, as a team. So they would tell you something, but they will say you have to verify with by talking to this person and that person, and then if all members of the team agree, and also if different members from different clans, which is why I was talking about clan memory, when they all concur, then they accept that as village history. They accept that as authentic village records. So this is what they do, at least amongst the Nagas. I can't speak for other communities, and I've not experienced the problem of somebody in power trying to impose um, his his history or the history of his ancestors, because with the Nagas there's such a strong sense of democracy that this is not allowed, and this doesn't feature or never used to feature before. So community memory has its own cleansing and verifying agency within itself. That's how I see it. Um, Family memory, again, the same thing happens. It's not one cousin who knows all the stories, but the different views, and we accept all the different, we let all the different perspectives be heard. And I think that's very important, because uh, how one cousin remembers it is different, slightly different from how the other cousin remembers it. So all these variations come into play, and we have to accept them all. Okay, what was the other question? The one about the Indo-Naga thing, could you
The
repeat
other
that?
one is how memories of, yeah, yeah. How do memories of parents and elders, drive the understanding of the younger generation as far as the conflict is concerned?
Mm-hmm. It's it's not oh, golly. See, at the present time, what is happening is that so many books are being written by survivors of the Indo-Naga War. So if you go home, you'll you'll find that almost every 6 months, a survivor is writing down his memoirs. That means, and it was such a big war fought over such a long period of time, and some soldiers would say they never got to know all the soldiers who belonged to their unit, that it was impossible. They were always on the move. This was in the 50s. And then now, in this age, you get very many different soldier histories. So it's different from conflicts and wars that have lasted for a much shorter period of time. And yeah, probably we probably have to find some way of determining the authenticity of the stories. But then again, these people are writing from their life experiences, from the history that they've lived through. So who are we to question the authenticity of that? I really admire the Mizo, the Mizo people. They have a distinct category of literature called Rambawi literature, which is solely on conflict literature, and that's how they've chosen to preserve their memories of this period. And I don't think it's fair to the people who've undergone it to bring all these intellectualized questions. I mean, it's like you're questioning their experience. Do you get what I mean? Sometimes the
Yeah.
the university approach is not always the right approach. You need the human approach.
Mm.
And then you need a
Yeah.
more creative approach than the official approach.
That's true. Now, there is one question which asks you to speak a little bit about religious memory, this native Naga religion. How do they memorialize, and how is it impacted by now the Christianity? With that,
Mhm. Can we separate that? I doubt it. At least in my generation, I don't find a separation between the old religion and Christianity, because what we practice is a very nativized form of Christianity. And the Christian still goes to the herbalist, right? When he sprained his ankle, he doesn't go to the doctor. He'd rather go to the herbalist who would fix it. Even with a certain amount of pain, he would fix it in 15 minutes, whereas the doctor would put in a cast and he'd have to wear that cast for 3 months or 1 month. So we still express so much faith in the people who practice the old religion or the old ways. And also the very intriguing and interesting part is that many of them might have become Christians and still carry on what they've been doing when they were in the old religion, because they recognize these as divine gifts, and they don't have the problem of boundaries, creating boundaries. And that's wonderful. It's to be encouraged. We shouldn't come in and say, oh, this is, this is heathen or whatever. Sorry, I'm just speaking my mind.
yeah, no, that's okay. And we'll just take one last question. And I think this is interesting. Um, can you comment on what happens when community memory to community memory when communities scatter? What happens to community memory when communities scatter? When the increase of time, let's say they scatter, and maybe, I guess, in a globalized terms also. So in that sense, this person is asking what happens to memory to the farmer who is not linked to her land and birds and other things,
Yeah.
natural world.
Yeah. There's always a lot of loss because we lose of the geography of cultural memory and community memory, but we have it here in our minds, and that geography will never lose it until we die. So it depends on the person. How much of community memory have you imbibed as a child? And also, how did you grow up? Did you have grandparents who told you the stories? Did you have parents who encouraged you to listen to the stories? It depends on all that, because if the community is scattered, the member of the community will still carry those with him or her wherever they go. So we say loss, but the loss is more geographical than really the other. I can't find a word for it. Yeah. And and it's sad because the thing is when you go back, when you go back to the geographical place, it would have changed so much. The thatch house that a grandparent lived in is now replaced by an RCC structure. So even the place of memory is no longer there, is totally altered. But what you have in your head will never go away. That's the real treasure house of memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that was an important aspect I think add on to it. I just want to leave with one beautiful thought that I still remember when reading Eastern's Sky is My Father. This is about the legitimacy of history, of when this agreement was about to be, when the final oath was to be taken between the people of Konoma and the British. The Konoma people was represented by this elder, Pelu. And the British asked him that, should we write an agreement? And this fellow said, no, I've given my word, and that's it. So I think that speaks a lot about the oral tradition, that it works on trust. Mm-hmm. And today we talk about how maybe, because we are so much influenced by the written culture, we end up thinking that whatever is not written is not authentic. And I think that is also not justified, because our many societies take the word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And for the Nagas, I think even today, the word of mouth, the oath that is taken by speaking it, is still held with such esteem. And so when somebody talks about the memory of a people of our land, that person speaks with a sense of responsibility. Is not just talking about with a sense of, trying to make a name for himself or herself. So those are things I think we need to also consider. And Easterine rightly pointed out that sometimes we end up going what is being taught in the universities, blindly following it without really kind of verifying how community would accept such a kind of a knowledge or database. It's been a wonderful opportunity listening to Easterine, and I think we have kind of wound up our 1 hour talk. And I believe that these conversations will go on, and Majha House should be appreciated for this initiative. So
Thanks
now
very
with
much.
this,
Thanks very much.
Yeah, over to
Thank
Preeti.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was so nice being with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Easterine, Veio, for that conversation. And as usual, I feel when Easterine speaks quietly, it's actually almost like listening to poetry, because so much of her, the sentences that she makes, they stay with you. And I've been writing down a few because I just have to keep them. They're so good. Every story has a right to be told. It's wonderful. And one of the things which I was thinking was that when you write, then do you know who your reader is going to be? Do you know your audience? Because I know that when I first started reading your work, so much of it was completely new for me, like it would be for many readers who are outside of Nagaland, or who are not familiar with the entire gamut of memories and the kind of imagination that you talk about, the spirit sightings and dreams, listening to dreams, all of that. So are you conscious when you're writing about all this that there are people who would probably be hearing and learning all of this for the very first time?
To be very truthful about that, Preeti, when I first started writing, and I still do that. I decided I'll write for Nagas, and because they'll understand what I'm talking about. And then there was a period where I felt the pressure of expectation. I felt that I needed to explain things in my writing, and I really rebelled against that because it wasn't right, and it just sort of suffocated my creativity. So I stopped doing that, and I just write for the Nagas, and then I find people on the periphery who want to know about the Nagas, and they read the book, and they come and visit Nagaland, and they ask questions. So that's lovely. But I think I wouldn't be authentic if I tried to write for another audience and try to explain Nagaland to them. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's not explained so much as just giving us another worldview, I mean, to look at things in another manner. There's a lot that's hiding underneath the surface, maybe that we haven't looked at. So I remember that novel in which, where it says that when you love somebody very much, then you see them even after they are dead and gone. And I hold on to that like a very comfortable feeling, I may not have thought it earlier, but now I feel like the person that I love and who's now not here, who's left, I will probably see them again because I do love them very much. So it's very comforting, and it's a completely new perspective for me.
No,
So
that's lovely to hear.
Thank you very much. Arvindaji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Preeti ji. And I must compliment and thank Preeti ji for bringing such beautiful souls over here at the platform of Majha House. Listen, honestly, what Preeti ji shared, like you are so much composed that whatever you're saying, whatever you're speaking, it's like it's the message from the divine. Like I was connected, for
Thank you.
all these
Thank you.
60 minutes, I was connected with myself. Honestly, though I was, trying to do the technical things, but every time I would see the screen, I would feel disconnected, and I really wish to be connected, and it was so wonderful.
Oh,
And thanks,
thank you.
Vyom. It was really very nice of you to conduct this beautiful session. And I must compliment that out of the audience, everybody appreciated the session. There's one person called Vibha Joshi who knows much about Kohima, who knows much about Nagaland, because I think probably that was her research work. And she was, talking to me through a chat, and like she was so much into it that I was more into her text. It was so nice. And thank you so very much. And I really wish when this pandemic is over and we all get vaccinated
Yeah.
and you are back to India,
Yeah.
please do bring Easterine
Yes.
to Amritsar. It
Very
will
good.
be
Yeah.
indeed an honor and be my personal guest.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll take you up on that. I've been to
Thank you so much.
Talwandi. I
Thank
forgot
you.
to say I've been to Talwandi.
Oh,
As a student, I went to Talwandi. I'm so proud of that. I forgot to tell you.
All right.
So I have to come to Amritsar.
you just must.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell everybody about tomorrow's session, which is on war and poetry. You will again hear a poem, I think, by Easterine there as well, because General Hemant Kumar Singh is presenting it along with Mandakini Gehlot. And there's a lot of poetry coming up and a lot of thought of, people who write poetry, which is about not only about martyrdom and sacrifice, but also about very human feelings of loss and loneliness after people go. So do join us tomorrow at 6 o'clock again on Zoom. Thank you very much for being here today. And thank you, Easterine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Veio.
Thank
That was
you.
really wonderful.
God bless.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.